to the Liberated Mind podcast, where we have in-depth conversations with experts in mindset, finance, health and wellness, nutrition, relationships, natural law, and so much more to help us break free from past limiting beliefs and subconscious programming so we can create a well-rounded life of success and abundance for ourselves and the people we love. Our promise to you is that you will positively benefit from every episode and every guest we bring on. We are here to emancipate ourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Welcome to episode 1 of the Liberated Mind podcast. I'm your host, Michael Pickens. To tell you a little bit about myself, in the past, I've been a hypnotherapist and success coach, helping people to create success in their lives. I've had a focus on coaching political candidates and salespeople. Currently, I'm the Chief Empowerment Officer for Botanical Enlightenment, where we manufacture all natural holistic health supplements for people and pets and assist people in creating their ideal health and overcoming illness. I have an upcoming book called The Liberated Mind to share the process of creating the life of your dreams faster and with certainty. What does it mean to have a liberated mind? Having a liberated mind is all about being able to identify and break free from limiting beliefs and subconscious programming that has been holding us back from reaching our maximum potential. It's all about understanding the true nature of ourselves, which includes our minds. The idea that we can modify our belief structure suggests that our identity is not a fixed entity, but something fluid and adaptable. Who we are is the sum of our beliefs, habits, and perceptions. But this notion implies that at any time, we have the power to change. We have the power to shift. This aligns with psychological theories such as neuroplasticity, which shows that the brain is malleable and can form new connections through learning and experience. Understanding this allows us to transcend limitations to become more than our limitations, to remove those limitations from our subconscious minds, realizing that our current state of mind and beliefs and habits do not define our entire existence. The self is a living process, not a static object. We are who we choose to be, whether we realize it or not. Choice is central to human existence. Even major religions talk about free will. Often we feel that our identity might be shaped by external forces, our past, our upbringing, societal expectations, right? Past experiences. However, the ability to choose who we want to be implies radical freedom. Existential philosophers like Jean-Paul Sartre have explored this concept extensively. Sartre argues that humans are condemned to be free, meaning that even though we may not control everything in our environment, we always have the freedom to choose our response to it. This freedom can be daunting, but also liberating when embraced. We have control even when we don't know it or haven't accepted it. The idea that we have control if we don't know it challenges the common belief that circumstances dictate our emotions and behaviors. Often we operate on autopilot, reacting to life without fully realizing our agency or our ability to change basically what's happening, right? So this ties into the notion of unconscious beliefs and deep-seated narratives we tell ourselves that shape our actions. So the moment we bring these unconscious beliefs to light, when we realize it, we gain power over them. By becoming more mindful, we can break free from habitual responses and start making conscious choices that align with our deeper desires and values. So it's all about having constant dialogue with ourselves versus blindly drifting through life. In the book, Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill, the concept of drifting is central to the devil's method of controlling people. And if you haven't read this book, or even listen to it on Audible, you should. Amazing book, one of my favorites from Napoleon Hill. He actually has a conversation with the devil, whether it's real or not, we don't know. But drifting refers to the tendency of individuals to live without purpose or direction or to focus thought. Napoleon Hill's devil describes drifters as those who go through life without a definite aim or goal or purpose. And as a result, they are easily influenced or manipulated or controlled by external forces to be without the self-dialogue. And as you look out there in society, you can see this happening. People follow along with what the media tells them, depending on which media outlet they follow. I'm not going to bring up specific examples in this episode, but I'm sure you can see this now clearly in society. If they watch a certain news channel, you already know what their opinion is going to be about certain things, what their opinions are going to be about certain politicians and policies and laws and so on and so forth, right? Because that's what they're plugging themselves into to get reinforced. And those people are also considered drifters because they don't have their own independent thought. In contrast, those who do not drift are portrayed as individuals with a clear purpose, strong sense of direction, and control over their thoughts and actions. The devil admits that he cannot control people who think for themselves and pursue their goals with determination. Overall, Napoleon Hill uses the concept of drifting as a metaphor for living unconsciously or passively, allowing external circumstances or negative influences to dictate one's life. So, communicating with yourself, self-dialogue is a critical part of our mental and emotional experiences. We are in a continuous conversation with our inner world, our thoughts, emotions, doubts, aspirations, right? This inner dialogue shapes our perception of reality and in turn influences our responses. When we take control of the dialogue by consciously challenging negative or limiting beliefs, we can reshape how we see ourselves and the world. And practices like mindfulness and journaling or meditation help cultivate awareness of the inner conversation, allowing us to break free from the patterns that no longer serve us. And I'm going to talk more about how we can break free later in this episode. But right now, to do this, we have to occasionally turn off the noise, right? It's scary for some people to be with their own thoughts. So they constantly need the TV on or the radio on in the background or a podcast playing, like whatever it is. They constantly need stimulation. They need to be around people all the time. Now, I'm not saying that you have to be just by yourself all the time or in silence. You have to be a monk, right? Just sometimes, just 30 minutes a day. So we can still find that moment to be deep with our thoughts without any distractions, without any outside stimulus coming into our minds. And especially when we have to make important decisions, or if we're in a heated or emotional conversation. This is something that I do. If I ever have to make very important business decisions, I won't make them immediately, right? I'll take some time to sit with it and think about it before I make the decision. Or even a heated or emotional conversations, we step away from it, kind of look at all sides. And that is the opposite of being a drifter. Someone who's a drifter will automatically get angry or get emotional, lash out, make rash decisions, right? So we have to take a few moments to breathe. And that's going to help our reaction and response. So it'll shape the outcome in a way that will be more of a benefit to ourselves and the people around us. And especially if the people around us are drifters, if they're not aware of their subconscious programming. Right. So we have to be the bigger people once we learn this knowledge. So I mentioned earlier that the way we react to our surroundings, our thoughts and our experiences defines who we are. This is a crucial distinction between reaction and response. So a reaction is often immediate, right? Driven by emotion or past conditioning through the subconscious. In contrast, a response involves a moment of reflection, pausing before acting, thinking about the options that we have to take. This pause grants us a space to choose how we want to respond in any situation, shaping our character and sense of self over time. Now, there are occasions and there are times where you have to make split-second decisions and you just have to go with it. However, you're going to make better split-second decisions if you start practicing some of the things that I'm going to be talking about later. So, what's a good example of this? So, Viktor Frankl is a Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist. He wrote a book. He beautifully expressed this statement: between stimulus and a response, there is space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and freedom. And he wrote the book, Man's Search for Meaning. And even though he was in a concentration camp and there were many around him that were suffering and he was suffering, he was still able to choose his attitude regardless of the circumstances around him, right? So he was able to liberate his mind from his circumstances. And once we understand that we can modify the response at any time, we begin to realize the mind's potential for liberation and freedom. So modify the response of any circumstance that we're in. And in his case, it was a concentration camp. Now, I guarantee we're not going to be going through something like that, hopefully, or, at least people here in the United States aren't going to be going through that, but we're still able to realize our mind's potential for liberation and freedom and then modify the response anytime. So in Bob Marley's Redemption song, he says, emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. And I put that in the intro to the podcast for a reason. This insight is very powerful because it reveals that we are not prisoners of our past experiences or current circumstances. Instead, we are the authors of our ongoing narrative. To free the mind is to recognize the creative power and take responsibility for the story that we are telling ourselves. In Buddhism, this idea is often discussed in terms of non-attachment, of freedom comes from detaching from rigid beliefs or expectations or an identity we've given ourselves. And in modern psychological terms, it's called cognitive behavioral therapy, and it teaches a similar concept. By identifying and challenging distortive or harmful thought patterns, we can change our emotional responses and behaviors, leading to greater mental freedom. In one of my favorite books on relationships, it's called Love, Freedom, and Aloneness by Osho. He talks about how you can tell if you really love someone. And that is if you truly want to see them happy, whether they are with you or not. If a requirement of your partner's happiness or your friend's happiness is that they must stay with you or they spend time with you, or if the requirement that you love them is that they stay with you or be with you, or require you to text them back right away or spend X hours a week with you, then you don't truly love them because there's requirements attached to that love. Unconditional love, no matter what, without the conditions attached to it. So it's a very liberating concept. Now, you may have requirements for partners and friends in the way they treat you, but if they don't want to meet those expectations, then you're not going to wish ill upon them. You're going to move on. But if you do, then you don't really love them. For a lot of people, this concept is transformative. To love someone, to truly love someone, means that you want them to be happy no matter what, regardless of what you want. And this is also a very liberating concept, and it breaks the chains that a lot of us put onto other people that keep us in misery because we have no control over it, right? And there's so many of these type of realizations like this that I want to share with you. I'm not going to do it all on this episode, and there's going to be a lot of other episodes in the future. But it's this moment when we understand that the limits that we experience are often self-imposed. There's so much information out there, and this realization is the gateway to personal growth and evolution, allowing us to actively choose new responses that align with the person we want to become. We stop seeing ourselves as victims of circumstance and start recognizing our power to create meaning and direction and improvement in our lives. Even if by just taking small steps daily to reach our goals, shifting our mindset just a little bit every day, and to improve our health just a little bit every day. Whatever example you want to use, you can put it in there, and it works for every aspect of our lives every single time, as long as we keep taking action. By consciously engaging in this self-awareness, we can take steps towards inner transformation, shifting from a life of reactivity to one of intentionality, right? Intentionality. I think that's a word. Intentionality, intention. So I'm going to look that up. It's where we are truly in control of our belief structure and our responses and ultimately our lives. All right. Intentionality. Yeah. So intentionality, the quality of mental states, thoughts, beliefs, and desires, hopes that consists in their being directed towards some object or state of affairs. So putting intention to freeing your mind, and in this case, opening up new possibilities to growth and insight that we never thought possible. So how do we do that? How do we liberate our minds and shift subconscious beliefs and habits that are holding us back to subconscious beliefs and habits that move us forward to a life of happiness and abundance and fulfillment and purpose? I'm not just going to talk about what a liberated mind is in this episode. I'm going to give you some concrete action steps to move in that direction. Subconscious beliefs and habits are the deeply ingrained patterns that shape how we perceive ourselves in the world. Often they operate below the surface of our conscious awareness. Actually, most of the time, they operate below the surface of our conscious awareness, subtly influencing our decisions and behaviors and emotions. A lot of the times we have no idea it's even happening. Now, we have to be able to identify that this is even happening. So there is a psychological concept called the 4 stages of competence. I love this. It was written by a guy named Noel Birch back in the 70s. And it's this: you start out unconsciously incompetent, like you don't know what you don't know. This is how everyone begins. So don't feel bad about it. We all start there. We just don't know what we don't know. Then we become consciously incompetent. So we recognize that we don't know something, right? And that something becomes aware, or we become aware of it. And that leads us to becoming consciously competent, where we have the desire to improve it and then actively have to make effort to improve it. And then we become what's called unconsciously competent. So now it's an underlying belief and knowledge base that is automatic in our actions, in our subconscious minds. So this model itself describes the progression individuals go through as they acquire new skills or knowledge or awareness. But in this case, it's much deeper because of the psychological implications of realizing that our own subconscious minds and belief systems might be making us miserable, might be keeping us sick. They might be holding us back in regards to liberating our mind. I should have broken it down on the basis of limiting beliefs. So why don't I do that now? I'll go in depth even further on each one. I really think that if you understand this, everything in your life will open up. So unconscious incompetence. At this stage, we are unaware of our limiting beliefs. We don't know what we don't know. It's like we're a little kid. We just don't know what we don't know. And then regarding those limiting beliefs, At this point, we may not even realize that we even have these beliefs, or these beliefs are holding us back. We might go through life unaware that certain limiting beliefs are shaping our thoughts and behaviors. And that's why I'm writing my new book and starting this podcast, to be able to share as many limiting beliefs with people as possible, and then flipping it and sharing the strengthening beliefs. And I'm excited for all of the expert guests to come on that I have lined up, because I'm sure there's a bunch of limiting beliefs that I still have that are holding me back in some areas of my life. And all the expert guests that are lined up, they're all experts in certain niche areas of life, right? Finances, relationships, and motivation, and personal development, and nutrition, and diet, all kinds of stuff. There's just so many different areas, and I'm really excited about it. Okay. So the next stage, unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence. This is where we become aware of our lack of knowledge or our limiting beliefs. We start to realize what we don't know in any specific area. And this awareness can often be uncomfortable or challenging, especially if we have a delicate ego structure. So at this stage, when we begin to recognize our limiting beliefs, it's often a breakthrough moment, because awareness is the first step to overcoming them and shifting them to a strengthening belief. However, we may still struggle with how to change these beliefs. And oftentimes there's a fork in the road, and most people, they come across this fork in the road when we become aware of the limiting beliefs or maybe new information, and they have to make a decision to start the process of changing these beliefs and shifting these beliefs, or they become afraid and they just shut down. And I've seen this happen before. And there's an acronym, FEAR, F-E-A-R, face everything and rise, or face everything and run. And a lot of people, because of the subconscious programming that they had as a kid, and I was there too, I'd face things would come up in my life and I'd run away, or I'd freeze, and I wouldn't take them head on because I just wasn't prepared for it. And is it my fault? Yes. Is it my upbringing? Yes. At the same time, I don't want to blame anyone for the knowledge that they didn't have when I was growing up. But as I've learned about this, I've been able to overcome it. So we have to take responsibility for ourselves. And the acronym FEAR, face everything and rise, or face everything and run. When something pops up, you run away. A simple example of this, I have a friend named Jason, and Jason loves to watch football. He really enjoys it, but he became emotionally attached to the outcome of his favorite team's game. And I'm sure you know people like this, right? Whatever sport it is, they become emotionally attached to the outcome of their favorite team. So for him, it was the Seattle Seahawks. Now, if the Seahawks lost, he was drained emotionally. Maybe he drank too much. Maybe he got angry, right? Or if the Seahawks won, it was the opposite. Maybe he drank too much that day because he was excited, right? He was celebrating the emotional roller coaster up and down. Now, great guy, he recognized this pattern, these beliefs, and that did not serve him. And he chose to become consciously competent and then unconsciously competent. So he recognized it. He decided to make a shift. And on the conscious level, he became consciously competent and aware. And he was able to recognize the subconscious negative patterns and the habits we make. And then we make a choice to break free. But it's not easy right away, right? We must focus and consciously apply ourselves. We are competent, but we have to think carefully about what we're doing so those feelings are still there. However, we make a conscious effort to move away from it. It takes time and effort and energy because of those limiting beliefs that are ingrained. But once we identify it, we begin to replace them with strengthening beliefs or empowering beliefs and move us toward our goals in life to be happier, be healthier, be more free. And in Jason's case, he was now freeing himself from those negative emotions that we would feel and the excitement on the other end that just really didn't need to be there is all manufactured, it's all made up. So in that case, we still need to make a conscious effort to think differently and behave in alignment with these new beliefs. And this stage requires attention and effort to sustain the change. Like I said, it takes 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, but I'm going to help you and give you some tools in a bit that will absolutely assist you in this process of being able to shift these negative beliefs into strengthening beliefs. But let's go to the final stage, and that's unconscious competence. At this level, we have mastered whatever skill it is or knowledge it is or emotion to the point where it becomes second nature. So we no longer need to consciously think about it. That's where you've already been able to shift the anger into understanding, right? That fear into courage. We're able to shift it. And over time, the new empowering belief becomes ingrained in our mindset. We no longer have to consciously challenge or replace those limiting beliefs or feelings because our new thought pattern and behaviors have become automatic. We are unconsciously doing the things that benefit us in life. So I say our and we and us a lot because I'm assuming that you're like me. You're choosing to liberate your mind and break free from subconscious limiting beliefs. So how do we apply this 4-step model to our lives? And the model can be applied to personal growth with limiting beliefs by helping us to understand that overcoming deeply ingrained beliefs is a process. Initially, we may not realize that these limiting beliefs even exist. That's the unconscious incompetence, but through self-reflection and guidance, becoming aware of these barriers, becoming aware of what we don't know, we're able to move on to conscious incompetence. We're now aware. Then with conscious effort and practice, we begin to change our thought patterns to be conscious competence. And finally, after consistent daily practice over time, these new beliefs become second nature, unconscious competence. And I need to make this point very clear. There is importance in patience, effort, and persistence in personal development, particularly when trying to shift deep-seated limited beliefs. So to break free from limiting subconscious programming and subconscious patterns, we first have to bring them to light, consciously challenge them, and then replace them with new empowering or strengthening beliefs. This process requires patience and self-awareness and consistency, hopefully daily effort. So the first step to identifying limiting subconscious beliefs, this is the most challenging part to even recognizing that there is a subconscious belief or habit that we have to become aware of and then shifting it. So subconscious beliefs are often invisible to us, but they reveal themselves through the thoughts that we have. For example, negative self-talk, statements like I'm not good enough, or I always fail, or I don't deserve success, or I'm not a writer, or I can't do insert thing here, whatever it is, or I don't deserve the life of my dreams, or I don't deserve to be whatever it is. We can also identify them through patterns of behavior. So if you're constantly procrastinating or self-sabotaging opportunities, or you have a tendency to avoid opportunities, a tendency to avoid even getting started. So you talk about this thing that you want to do, but then you don't take the actions that are necessary to even get started. Most of us know what we should be doing. Most of us know what we should be eating. Most of us know what exercises we should be doing or whatever else it is, right? So we end up making excuses for ourselves because we start feeling different emotional responses coming up. So the emotional responses are also a good way to identify limiting beliefs, and they have to do mainly with anxiety, fear, or guilt. So let's go through those three. And they often arise in response to the thoughts or situations where our internal belief systems are at odds with what our desires or actions are, what our wants are. Emotions can absolutely help pinpoint limiting beliefs by creating the structural tension in the mind. So when you think of doing something that you know you should be doing, and anxiety comes up. When you get anxiety, it often arises from uncertainty, perceived threats, or even a fear of failure. When you experience anxiety, it's typically because your mind is anticipating a negative outcome or potential danger. And then you have to identify the limiting beliefs attached to it. So you ask yourself, what exactly am I afraid of? Exactly am I afraid will happen? Anxiety can indicate a belief that you're not capable, that things will go wrong, that you're not worthy of success. Can be limiting beliefs like I'm not good enough to succeed, I don't have the skills to handle this situation, or people will judge me if I fail. There's so many of these statements that can go through your mind. And that's what this is all about, examining it. For example, if you feel anxious about public speaking, it may stem from a belief that you are not confident in front of others, or you're not articulate enough, which limits your ability to take on opportunities that involve speaking. And then you can insert basically anything that pertains to you. Obviously, public speaking is just an example, but whatever it is that you're looking to do, you can insert that example. And if you feel anxious about it, it's because there's a deep-seated belief that you're not confident enough in it, or that you're not good enough to do that, or good enough to learn that, or whatever it is. And then the next thing is fear. And fear is a little different than anxiety. Fear is a survival instinct, right? But when it manifests in situations that don't actually threaten your life, it's often tied to limiting beliefs about your abilities or your own self-worth. So the fear of failure, the fear of rejection, you could be afraid for your life from some situations like skydiving, where there could be an actual threat to your life. However, most people aren't afraid of that. If they're afraid of public speaking, or afraid of making sales calls, or basic things like that, and you ask yourself the question, what am I really afraid of? And that question can expose limiting beliefs like you're not capable of handling challenges, or you're not worthy of love or success. If you fail, you'll be rejected or humiliated, right? There's no physical threat there. It's all emotional. It's all made up in our head. So example, here's one that I'm familiar with. Fear of starting a business might reveal a belief that you're not capable of running a successful business. Here's the thing. No one is in the beginning, right? You have to start going through it. You have to take steps, which is a self-imposed limitation based on past experiences or external conditioning. Right? If your parents did not own a business, my parents didn't own businesses. So this was something new to me, right? So there's this external conditioning that my mom wanted me to be a teacher. My dad wanted me to be an electrical lineman, right? That's external conditioning. There's another great acronym for fear called fantasized experiences appearing real. So I had the idea to write a book in my early 20s, got into personal development, went through the Success Principles course and Maximum Confidence course from Jack Canfield. However, it took me till I was 28 to write my first book. And I'm not really proud of my first book, but I felt the fear and I did it anyways, right? But it took years to replace the fear with courage. Then you have to start thinking about what other emotions that can signal those limiting beliefs. And also at the same time, how you overcome those limiting beliefs. Guilt is another one. Guilt arises when we feel like we've done something wrong, whether morally, socially, or in terms of our expectations for ourselves. And it often indicates a conflict between your actions or lack of action even, and your values or beliefs. So if you ask yourself, why do I feel guilty about this? And it can highlight a belief like that you're not allowed to put yourself first. Well, this is a big one if you have a family, or if you're wanting to do something that will exceed what your parents or your siblings have accomplished, because we don't want to feel guilty about surpassing them. Or there's other programming like, if I succeed, others will suffer, right? And that's another one that's pervasive in society, is that there's a limited pie And that if you get more of that pie, someone else is going to get less of that pie. So you feel guilty about success. And then it leads to, I don't deserve success or happiness because my success and happiness means that someone else will have less success and happiness. And that's just not true. But that's the subconscious programming that we have to get over. Another example is feeling guilt about taking time for yourself may reveal a belief that you're not worthy of prioritizing your needs. Or if you focus on your success, you're neglecting others. And moms have a very tough time with this one, right? Because if they focus on their success and their happiness, they're neglecting the success of their children. And it's a fine balance, right? But it's still programming you have to overcome. So you have to find that balance. So talking about limiting these beliefs. So now that we talked about the feelings around it and using emotions to be able to identify the limiting beliefs, now it's like, how do we put it down on paper, identifying these limiting beliefs on paper? And one way of doing that is journaling. Journaling is a great way to identify. First, write down the goal that you want to achieve, or the person you want to become, or the skill you want to learn. Then write down the immediate thought, fears, emotions, behaviors that seem to pop up after you write down the goal that might limit you. So if you feel anxious or procrastinate, right, these are great triggers. Notice situations that consistently evoke negative emotions or behaviors and ask yourself what belief might be driving that response. What belief might be driving the trigger or the emotion? For example, if your goal is to write a book and your immediate thought is that you should instead clean your house or wash your car, right? That's a red flag for limiting beliefs because you are procrastinating on it. Thoughts of procrastination pop up. Oh, I really need to do dishes, or I really need to watch that show instead of writing. So instead you watch the show or play a game or whatever it is, right? And then you have to ask yourself, why do I feel this way? Or what belief is causing me to react like this? You know, if you often procrastinate, or a limiting belief like I'm not capable enough may be at the root cause of this habit. Or you're afraid of failure, or you're afraid of success, right? If you do this one thing, if you ask yourself why and reflect on the answer, you are doing more than I believe 99% of the people out there, in my opinion. It is a huge success just to start the process of identifying what it is that's holding you back, what your triggers are, what the limiting beliefs are. And if you need help, I'm happy to schedule some time to coach you through this process. Most people are drifters. Just like we talked about earlier with Napoleon Hill's book, Outwitting the Devil, right? It's time for you to take control of your mind and free yourself from mental slavery. Love that quote. Okay. Now, the next step is once you identify the limiting beliefs, it's time to challenge them and question them. Once you identified them, whatever's holding you back, the next step is to challenge its validity. You have to break the stranglehold that it has in your mind and question it, so it starts to release. Most subconscious beliefs are formed in childhood or through past experiences, and often based on outdated or distorted perceptions. One of my favorite stories about this process is that of Frederick Douglass, and it inspired the title of this podcast and my new book. In his autobiography, The Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, an American Slave. His experience highlights the profound connection between literacy and freedom, or learning and freedom, expanding your mind and freedom, as well as the obstacles he faced in the pursuit of knowledge, in the liberation of not only his mind, but in turn his body as a slave. So really quick, Frederick Douglass was born into slavery. Around the age of 8 years old, he was sold to a couple in Maryland. It was there where he had his first opportunity to learn to read. So remember, he had no idea what reading even was before then. Unconscious incompetence. He had no idea what reading was. The wife of his slave master was initially very kind and compassionate towards Douglas. She had never owned a slave before. And out of sympathy, she began teaching Douglas the alphabet. And this was a pivotal moment in his life because it opened the door to literacy and it made him consciously aware of what he didn't know, right? So conscious incompetence. However, when her husband discovered that she was teaching Douglas to read, he forbid her from continuing. He told her that she had to stop. He believed that teaching a slave to read was dangerous, and stating that if Douglas learned to read, he would become dissatisfied with slavery and ultimately seek freedom. So the husband's words, if you give a slave an inch, he will take a mile. A slave should know nothing but to obey his master, to do as he is told. Learning to read would spoil the best slave in the world. If he learns to read, it will forever unfit him to be a slave, right? Apparently, Douglas was in the room or nearby and heard her husband say this. This statement had a profound impact on Douglas. It made him realize that literacy and learning to read was a key to his freedom, to his emancipation, not just physically, but mentally. Douglas later wrote that this moment made him fully understand the power of education. After this, the wife changed her behavior towards Douglas, becoming harsher and stricter as she was influenced by her husband. And however, it was too late. Douglas was now more aware, consciously incompetent, and determined more than ever to learn how to read. So Douglas began trying to teach himself. He used creative methods to learn from white children in the neighborhood. He befriended them and get them to teach him letters and words. He would exchange food for lessons, ask them to help him out while pretending he didn't understand certain things. He also scavenged newspapers, old books, any written material he could find. One of the most significant books he came across was The Columbian Orator, a collection of speeches and essays, which deeply influenced his understanding of liberty and human rights and resistance to oppression. As Douglas gained more literacy, as he became more acutely aware of the injustices of slavery, his ability to read was both a blessing and a curse because it exposed him to the ideas of freedom, but also deepened his frustration and pain about being enslaved. Douglas later wrote about how learning to read made him understand the depth of his enslavement more fully, but it also gave him the tools to dream of a life of freedom. He was becoming consciously competent. And Douglas's literacy became a crucial part of his eventual escape from slavery. It allowed him to forge passes and write documents, communicate with abolitionists. His ability to read and write became one of the most powerful tools he had in his fight for freedom. Later, as a freedman, Douglas used his education to become a leading voice in the abolitionist movement, writing books and speeches and essays that highlighted the horrors of slavery and the importance of freedom and human rights. He became unconsciously competent. So remember, at age 8 is when he became consciously aware that reading even existed. He didn't know what he didn't know. And then he didn't even write his autobiography till he was 27, so 19 years later. So this process takes time, but there's ways to speed it up. So I feel that personal development does the same thing for people enslaved by their limiting and past beliefs. Now, this type of slavery, I understand, is definitely not the same as being physically enslaved like Douglas was. However, he had to first free his mind before he could free his physical body. And it's very much like us. Freeing my mind has allowed me to start multiple businesses, write books, speak in public, make the sales calls, create the new habits to bring abundance into my life. Essentially freeing my mind first and then freeing my physical self later. Like we all do this. We all go through this process. Like Douglas, we have to challenge these old belief systems. So how do we challenge these beliefs? We first ask for evidence. So after we write down some of the limiting beliefs that we have in our mind, we ask ourselves, is this belief really true? What evidence supports it? What evidence contradicts it? For example, if you believe I'm not smart enough, you list times where you've demonstrated intelligence or problem solving abilities, you challenge the limiting belief and you reframe it. So instead of saying, I'm not good at this or I'm not smart enough, ask, how can I improve? How can I learn this? What skills do I need to develop to get better at this insert thing here? Whatever it is, we have to challenge the limiting belief and reframe it as I'm getting better. I'm learning whatever it is that you need to learn, right? You're taking the action, whatever action it is, and then use those counter examples. So if you believe you're a failure, remind yourself of past successes. Every time you catch yourself reinforcing a limiting belief, counter it with facts that prove otherwise. And Jack Canfield's Success Principles course, he has us write down 100 past successes. Now, that's a lot, right? And you might think to yourself, well, I don't have 100 successes. But when you really break it down and list them out, even the smallest one, I learned to tie my shoe. I learned to ride a bike. I got my first job, whatever it is. It doesn't matter because it gets us into the habit of identifying our successes by default instead of identifying the negative, right? Most people are hard on themselves and dwell on past mistakes or failures. And we're going to shift that mindset and dwell on past successes as well. In the Success Principles, Jack Canfield also talks about W. Clement Stone, one of his mentors, and he said that he's an inverse paranoid. Instead of thinking that the world is plotting to do him bad, the world is plotting to do him good, right? The world and the universe is plotting to help him along his journey. So once we've identified the beliefs that need to be challenged and start to reframe the belief into empowering statements, we need to write down the new empowering statements and then visualizing it. Visualizing the empowering statements is a powerful tool for rewiring the subconscious mind because it helps to create new neural pathways in the brain by associating positive emotions and experiences with a new belief we're looking to instill in our subconscious. So the visualizations create the story in the subconscious mind as an experience that actually happened, even though it hasn't yet. So first creating that mental image, closing your eyes, visualizing yourself living in alignment with the new empowering belief. For example, if you try to shift from I'm not good enough to I am confident and capable, imagine yourself confidently handling the challenges, speaking assertively, achieving success, whatever that is, going from I'm not a writer to visualizing yourself writing, visualizing the words flowing onto your paper or document on your laptop or whatever, going from I can't speak in public to visualizing yourself confidently speaking in a room full of people, right? I visualize myself recording these podcasts and the right thoughts and questions just flow out of my subconscious, and the positive impact that it will make will empower thousands of people. Those are the thoughts in the subconscious program that I have when I record this podcast, right? That's what I believe right now. And I believe fully 100% that from my heart that, and it's because I've gone through this and also I've added emotion to it. So feeling the emotion associated with the new belief. So imagine the pride or the joy or the satisfaction of embodying these new beliefs. I envision the people that I'm going to help and assist in their journey just by recording some words on a podcast. And the more vividly and emotionally I can imagine it, the more effective the exercise will be in rewiring our subconscious minds. But you have to do it daily. And that's probably the most important part, is to stay consistent, because that's what's going to reinforce these new habits, these new programs in your subconscious mind, is doing it consistently over time. Visualization works best when done consistently. So you set aside each day to focus on the new beliefs and how they would transform your life. The easiest way I found is to write out the new beliefs as affirmations on index cards and keep them on your nightstand. And then you can read through them, read them in your mind, read them out loud, visualize yourself accomplishing each one as you go through it. So you read it, think about it, visualize it, go on to the next one, right? And you just keep going through those index cards and you go through it when you wake up, before you go to sleep. So let's go a little bit deeper into using the affirmations, using the positive affirmations. So affirmations are statements that help you reprogram your subconscious mind. Repeating positive, empowering statements can override old limiting beliefs. However, it's important to be intentional and authentic with your affirmations to avoid triggering too much resistance from your subconscious mind. Now, I brought this up briefly earlier. Saying something to yourself that isn't exactly true is going to create some structural tension in the brain. So if you're not currently a writer and your affirmation is, I am joyfully writing 1 or more hours a day on my new book, that structural tension in your subconscious mind will cause the negative feelings we talked about earlier, anxiety, fear, guilt. Then what you do at that point is we have to push through the resistance and we have to do the thing. We have to start writing. We have to start doing whatever it is. Lao Tzu has a great quote about this. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And that's the beginning, but then there's step 2 and step 3 and step 4 and step 5 and so on and so on and so on, right? How do you eat an elephant? 1 bite at a time. Now that's just to say, don't eat elephants, right? Or how do we move a mountain? 1 stone at a time. How do you win an election? 1 vote at a time. How do you write a book? 1 word at a time. There's another one of my favorite books called The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield, not to be confused with The Art of War by Sun Tzu, but The War of Art is all about overcoming resistance and pushing through the limiting beliefs. Highly recommended. However, affirmations can make it much easier to push through the resistance. All right, so let's get back to the affirmations real quick. So we talked about writing them down on index cards. You want to phrase them in the present tense. Use statements that reflect your desired beliefs in the present, such as I am worthy of success. I am confident and capable. I am a writer. And the words flow on paper. I speak confidently in front of crowds of people. I am confident on the phone talking about my products or services, right? And ensure they feel believable. If saying I am rich feels too far from your current reality, try I am becoming more financially abundant every day to avoid subconscious resistance. Because the truth is you can become more financially abundant every day by making a little bit more money and so on. And then we have to repeat it consistently. Write our affirmations down, say them aloud, repeat them in your mind, especially in the morning or before you go to sleep, when your subconscious is more receptive to new programming. And we're going to discuss this in a future episode about how we can use different tools and technologies and supplementation to make these new improvements easier to assimilate in our subconscious. There are actually botanicals that I take that help grow neurons in the brain that help rewire the neural pathways. And I'm excited to talk about those, but I'm not going to do that right now. So the most important part of these affirmations is to also pair them with action. Affirmations are most effective when paired with real world actions that support the new beliefs. So if you say, I am confident, you have to take the small steps to act confidently throughout the day. Or if you say, I am happily writing my book, when you take the small steps of write down some sentences every day or some paragraphs, it becomes your new belief system. And it makes it easier to write because that structural tension in your mind dissipates because your subconscious says, oh, he is a writer. She is a writer. Look at them writing. I'm going to reinforce more of that. That's what your subconscious says to yourself. I'm going to reinforce more of that. Success by an inch is a cinch. By a yard, it's hard. So what that means, success by an inch is a cinch, by a yard is hard. And what that means is that we have to rewire habits through small, consistent actions. Instead of trying to make huge leaps of progress at one time, we're taking little bites out of it. Creating subconscious habits requires rewiring our brain through belief and repetition. By consistently practicing the new behaviors, we weaken the old behaviors and strengthen the new ones. So how do we shift these habits? The easiest way that I've found is to start small. Break down the larger goals or desired habits into small, manageable steps. For example, if you want to develop a habit of exercising regularly, start with just 5 minutes a day and gradually increase over time. You can also use triggers. So attach your new habit to a trigger in your daily routine. For example, if you want to start meditating, do it right after brushing your teeth in the morning, or setting an alarm to meditate at a certain time every day, and just stopping whatever you're doing and breaking from it, or wait till you have your next break and then just make sure you get it done. I have water alarms that go off throughout the day as reminders to drink more water so I can stay hydrated and stay healthier. So when that goes off, I just grab some water, drink it, get back to what I'm doing. Then you have to track your progress. And that's really important because it reinforces everything that you're doing. Keeping a habit tracker or a journal, like I said, or a to-do list, as basic as that, to monitor your consistency and then celebrating those small wins that will help to reinforce the new habit. However, we also need to practice self-compassion if we mess up. So don't get discouraged by setbacks. I've seen people quit because they couldn't stay consistent. No, it takes time to create the consistency. It takes a conscious effort to do it. And if you mess up, and if you mess up in the process of rewiring habits, it's okay. It's normal to encounter the resistance along the way. It's normal to maybe miss a day. Life happens sometimes, but the key is to hop right back on that positive habit and be compassionate towards ourselves through this process. And the best time to reprogramming your subconscious is before sleep. And the subconscious mind is most receptive to new ideas when you're in a hypnotic state, the state between wakefulness and sleep, when your brain is starting to produce theta waves. And we're going to have an entire podcast on the brain waves and how they work. Just know that theta waves make the time before you go to sleep a powerful window for subconscious reprogramming. And you can also achieve this state through meditation, binaural beats, hypnotherapy. You can even use nootropics or psychedelics. I would just highly recommend finding someone to assist you that has a solid track record of success in whatever it is you want to accomplish. I've got an amazing piece of advice from an old mentor of mine named Brad Hager. He wrote a course called Success Leaves Clues. And in it, he says, only take advice from someone in a position you would like to be in, right? Don't take advice about money from someone who is broke. Don't take advice about fitness from someone who is not fit or overweight or whatever, right? You get it. Getting back. So reprogramming the subconscious before bed, we talked about affirmations, repeating those positive affirmations written down on the cards as you fall asleep. You can record them and listen to them before sleep. Since the subconscious is more open to suggestion, it's a prime time to reinforce these new beliefs. Also visualizing this as you're falling asleep, spending a few minutes visualizing your desired reality while you're speaking them. You're also visualizing yourself taking the actions, and then practicing gratitude and being thankful for your new beliefs will help anchor these new subconscious patterns. There are also guided meditations on YouTube that you can listen to that reinforce the beliefs as well, or habits when you drift off to sleep, or you could make your own. And I used to do this for clients, so they have their own recording with binaural beats and their voice to help anchor those beliefs. So then you got to think about, what about during the day? And another way to do this is to surround yourself with positive influences, listening to audiobooks about whatever it is you're trying to do, listening to podcasts about whatever it is you're trying to do. You could add alpha beats to the affirmations and listen to them throughout the day so you don't fall asleep while you're listening to them. Also, the people that you hang around with play a significant role in reinforcing beliefs and habits. To sustain the change, you have to surround yourself with people and even media and experiences that support your new mindset. You might have to change the music you listen to or the TV that you watch to cultivate a supportive environment. And then finding accountability. So sharing your goals with a friend, hiring a coach, finding a support group to keep you motivated. I recently attended a Success Summit featuring Jack Canfield, and there was a bunch of other speakers, positive thought leaders who were there speaking. And although the speakers were great, it was also the people who I connected with during the breaks and the mixers who I also got value from, because most of them were not super successful yet. They're still on their journey, like I am. Well, I guess everyone's on their journey. So these type of events are important. Now, before I close out the first episode, I just want to say again that changing subconscious beliefs and habits is a gradual process that requires patience and persistence. Like I said before, expect resistance along the way, but trust that each small step contributes to long-term transformation. You have to stay consistent. So acknowledge yourself, reward yourself for any progress, no matter how small. Regularly check in with yourself to assess your beliefs and habits and adjust as necessary. In your journal, on your to-do list, mark down your progress. Also, cultivate gratitude for the progress you've made and the lessons that you've learned along the way. This is an exciting process, and I promise you that if you start today, you'll be so much better off a year from now, because that time is going to go by regardless. So turn off the TV, use social media only when you have to, right? Focus on making these shifts. Changing subconscious beliefs and habits is not an overnight process, but with intentionality, mindfulness, and consistent practice, it is entirely achievable. By following these steps, identifying the limiting beliefs, challenging the limiting beliefs, visualizing the new possibilities, using affirmations, rewiring habits, you can transform the subconscious patterns that have been holding us back and replace them with ones that empower us to live a more fulfilling and purposeful life. In the future episodes of this podcast, I will be interviewing experts in many different fields to talk about the ways they have overcome specific limiting beliefs and programming that have held them back or held their clients back in one way or another. I've got some amazing people lined up to come on the show, and I promise you that you will get something positive out of every single episode. I'm also looking forward to sharing more of my insights with you, and I'm happy you decided to join me. And please support our sponsor, Botanical Enlightenment, so we have the resources to keep producing this podcast and getting it out there and sharing this information out with you and the world. Thanks so much. This episode is brought to you by Botanical Enlightenment. Check out our botanical bundle that contains our Mind Bloom Nootropic Brain Boosting Drink Mix, Super Shrooms Adaptogenic Drink Mix, and Gaia Greens, our Alkalizing Drink Mix. Visit botanicalbundle.com to learn more. Or check out all of our products at botanicalenlightenment.com.